I think having JD become the vice president, first of all, it's a relief considering who else Donald Trump could have picked, right? Trump could have picked an establishment guy to appease certain segments of the whatever, blah, blah, blah. JD is not establishment, that's for sure. So that's first, okay. Then, I think he's a great pick. Goodness, if you love a rags to riches story, this one's about as good as it gets. But really, your starting point on if we should like JD or not is to look at who hates him. And we knew this one was coming, but they actually said it out loud. Here's Van Jones on JD Vance.
You know, part of the reason that JD Vance matters isn't for these kind of short-term electoral calculations. He matters because of what he means to the Republican Party long-term. This is cementing a kind of nationalism. Yeah. Now, Trump, to your point, I agree with you, he's an instinctive, impulsive, intuitive nationalist. J.D. Vance is an ideological nationalist. That's a much more dangerous virus because he can polish this stuff and make it seem palatable to people. He can sell this stuff to Silicon Valley. He can sell this stuff other places. And what it does is it locks the Republican Party on a pathway that I think is dangerous for the world. Again, the Ukrainians are now in deep trouble. NATO is now in deep trouble. Trump he could have gone with a Nikki Haley and signal to the world, hey, listen, I got to give stuff to my base, but I'm not going to abandon the world. This pick is a horror on the world stage. So J.D. Vance matters because Donald Trump is pointing the Republican Party in a very scary direction for the long term.
It's great. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Love it. That means he's a great pick. And the stereotypical part of that was, because we said this like if Ron DeSantis was going to win the nomination, remember? We said the argument from the left would be, Ron DeSantis is worse than Trump because he actually believes the thing that Trump says. And that's what they're saying now about J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance is worse than Trump because he actually believes it. One thing I love about J.D. is how he wrote Hillbilly Elegy. And he wrote that and was a darling of the left. And then he used their money and the fame he gave them to become a supporter of and then the vice president of the thing they hate the most. That's awesome. All the reviews of Hillbilly Elegy in 2016 were these glowing reviews, and now he's a virus worse than Trump. It's beautiful. Let me address two concerns that I've heard people say about J.D. Vance. We'll do these right out of the gate. Number one, his age. He's young. He's 39. We're the same age. Well, you got to be 35 to be president. He's 39, so he beats that qualification. Wisdom, I think, is the most important thing here. I think that's what that age is trying to get at. It's trying to get something like wisdom. So I'm 39. I don't have much wisdom. He's 39 and has lived 100 lifetimes. He had to grow up a lot faster than I did. When you're 12 years old and you're having to navigate the foster care court system because of your drug-addicted mom, and you're operating constantly in your fight or flight mode your entire childhood, having to try and play 3D chess just in order to survive every day, he is wise beyond his years. So age is not a concern for me. I had someone the other day on the radio said Trump can serve as a type of mentor for him as well, and I like that. So age is a zero concern for me. Second concern I've had is the stuff he said about Trump in the past. Like, how can you support him or like him when he said these horrible things about Trump? Okay, you're allowed to change your mind about things. You're allowed to change your mind about people when new information becomes available. Do you remember the National Review back in 2016 when it looked like Trump was actually going to win the primary? They wrote a whole issue called Against Trump. And it was all these conservatives who were making their argument against Donald Trump. And it was Glenn Beck and Brent Bozell, who's, by the way, his son is now in prison for being involved in January 6th. Dana Lash, Thomas Sowell, my hero, Thomas Sowell. They all were speaking out against Donald Trump. And now they all love Donald Trump. I forgive all of them. A lot of people were not sure about Donald Trump back in 2016. It's okay. We're on board now. Trump had to prove himself. And he did. That's it. We have to allow space for people to change their mind. It's okay to change your mind. In fact, if you're wrong, I recommend you change your mind immediately. Trump changed his mind, right? We're told all the time that Trump is such a terrible person because he holds vendettas against anyone who ever says anything bad against him. And here he is embracing someone who said bad things about him in the past. Isn't that noble? Also, Trump changed his mind because Trump hates facial hair, yet chose a vice president with a beard. By the way, J.D. Vance needs a beard. Have you ever seen him without a beard? Very baby-faced, needs that beard. First time that someone has been on the ticket, president or vice president, with a beard since 1882, Benjamin Harrison. We're going to make beards great again. Trump doesn't like facial hair. But he chose J.D. Vance, so we could all change our minds on important things. I don't think that's a big deal. Here's my first point before we get to our guests. One of my best friends lived the exact same life as J.D. Vance. Mom was a meth addict. Dad was an alcoholic, physically abusive every night, and his life was saved by his grandma. It's just like J.D. My friend read Hillbilly Elegy and cried on every page and then showed it to his brother, and his brother said, JD's our long-lost brother. We live the same life. It's not a good life. But if you can get out of it, it can make you an incredible person, just like my friend. We're going to talk, on my radio show, we're going to talk a lot about it, and here we'll do an abbreviated version about Appalachian culture. Also, hillbilly culture, same thing. There are pros and cons to every culture. There's two major pros to hillbilly culture that I think are really well personified by JD in his life and in his messaging. Number one is self-reliance. When you're in the mountains, when you're a hillbilly, you're not going to rely on the government for anything because there is no government. There's no police. The sheriff is a day's drive away, and you know him, and he's using his own truck lately because the sheriff's car broke down and he's not helping you or whatever. So that you're self-reliant. You got your own gun to protect yourself. There's no government. No one's going to save you. It's on you and it's on your family. And that's it. We just finished reading with my kids. We read a little bit of Little House on the Prairie every night. We just finished one of the books. It's called Farmer Boy. And the real short of it, Almanzo, he's 12 years old, and he's got to figure out whether he wants to take this apprenticeship with the guy who makes wagons in town, or if he wants to stay on the farm just like his dad. And his dad's like, son, it's up to you. His mom doesn't want him to do it. And the dad's like, son, it's up to you. You get to decide. You can go work at this wagon place, be an apprentice over there, and you'll have a lot of money. And you won't have to go work outside in the cold or the heat, and you'll be really comfortable. And life will be pretty good, but you'll be dependent on other people for everything. Or you can stay on the farm, and it's going to be super hard. You're going to have to get up every day, every morning. There's no breaks, there's no holidays, there's no vacations. And you're going to have to live like that for the rest of your life. But you'll be free and independent. What do you choose, son? And the 12-year-old chose to be like dad. Appalachian hillbilly culture will make you very self-reliant. But I would say the strongest aspect of this culture is loyalty. Hillbillies are fiercely loyal. It's similar to the self-reliant, right? The people who you do rely on and who rely on you, you are loyal to the death for them. I'll give you an example of this. This was about a year or so ago at the beginning of the Ukraine war. And for some reason, an MMA fighter was asked about the war in Ukraine. And here's what this boy from Arkansas said.
Get your thoughts on the whole Russia and Ukraine situation.
You know, here's my first thought is I'm not going nowhere to fight none of these wars for these politicians. I'm staying at home, and when the war comes to Arkansas, I will dig my boots in the ground, and I will die for everything I love, and I will not retreat. If this country's invaded and everybody's saying, well, we gotta evacuate, we gotta leave, I will not. I will dig my boots in the Arkansas soil, and I will fight for the people that I love, for the land that I love, and the way of life that I love. But I'm not going overseas to fight. I don't know what's going on, to be honest, brother. I really don't. There's so much stuff, and I don't think nobody knows what's going on fully.
That's a man who's loyal to the death for a people and a place. I want to talk about those two ideas coming up in our last segment here. I'll wrap up this segment, though, with this segment from Hillbilly Elegy, just to get you an idea of who J.D. Vance is and who hillbillies are. He said, you have to appreciate my family and my neighborhood and my community's identity derives from our love of country. I couldn't tell you a single thing about Bright Hit County's mayor, its healthcare services, or its famous residents. But I do know this: bloody Bright Hit. It allegedly earned its name because the county filled its World War I draft quota entirely with volunteers, the only county in the entire United States to do so. Nearly a century later, and that's the factoid about Bright Hit that I remember best. It's the truth that everyone around me ensured that I knew. I once interviewed Mama, his grandma, for a class project about World War II. After 70 years filled with marriage, children, grandchildren, death, poverty, and triumph, the thing which Mama was unquestionably the proudest and most excited was what her and her family did during World War II. We spoke for minutes about everything else, but we spoke for hours about war rations, Rosie the Riveter, her dad's wartime love letters to her mother from the Pacific, and the day we dropped the bomb. Mama always had two gods, Jesus Christ and the United States of America. I was no different, and either was anyone else that I knew. Last part here. Mama and Papa taught me that we live in the best and greatest country on earth. This fact gave meaning to my childhood. Whenever times were tough, when I felt overwhelmed by the drama and the tumult of my youth, I knew that better days were ahead because I lived in a country that allowed me to make the good choices that others hadn't. I feel overwhelming appreciation for these United States. I know it's corny, but it's the way I feel. JD is someone who loves this country. And not just its ideas, but the actual place and its actual citizens. And he loves it to his core. He loves it in his bones. It's one of the things that got him through his childhood, was this love of country. No matter what was going on, all the chaos and madness and insanity around him, drug addicted mom, the whole thing, he could always rely that this was the greatest country in the world. Think about that. Consider that compared to the left, who tells kids and who believe themselves that this is the worst country in the world. If you know hillbilly culture, you know J.D. Vance. When you're growing up in the chaos that he did, you know that no one's going to come and save you. No one from the government's going to come and save you. In fact, they've screwed a lot of things up, and you end up really, really, truly loving this country. I'm excited for J.D. Vance to be our next vice president.